Our son was living and working in Thailand, and Jeff and I wanted to connect with Christians in Thailand. And we tried several things. We tried emailing some churches and didn't get much response. And Jeff prayed about it some more and decided to try YWAM. He said, we'll give it one last try. And so he emailed YWAM and got a response back from them. And specifically, it was from Nilla, who is the director of the Tamar Center in Thailand.
Nella invited us to come to UCM. That's their weekly meeting of all the missionaries in the city, where they meet together just to encourage each other and to pray and to worship God. And we were about 15 minutes into this meeting, and suddenly the door opened and this whirling dervish comes in, about 5'3", and she sits down 3 rows in front of us, and that turned out to be Margie. That very night, I emailed Margie, and I said, we're only going to be here for 2 more days, but we'd like to know more about your foundation and what you do. And that very night, she came back to us with an email and said, well, I'm going to prison in the morning, and I'd like for the 2 of you to come along. We walked in, and I just wasn't prepared for what I encountered. I thought I would encounter felons and hardened criminals, and what I encountered was families, and particularly small children, and it just broke my heart because they were hungry, they needed clothes, they needed medical attention.
It breaks your heart because these are women and children, and they haven't really done anything that we would consider to be worthy of being in jail for. They were there because their visas had run out, or because they didn't have work permits. And to see babies crawling on the floor, and it just is very touching to see the children behind the bars with their mothers and having nothing to eat. And so bringing food in and taking care of medical needs and giving them diapers and clothing was just it was overwhelming, and it was very difficult, but it's also a very joyful thing because Jesus said, you visited me in prison. And so we knew that we were taking the love of God there too.
The reason we're in Thailand is not because any of us on the Hands of Hope staff divined that we needed to be there. It was Jeff and Sherry Parks just feeling that calling and that leading, and they took a chance. They came to us, they said, hey, can we do ministry there? We think there's opportunity. And we went. In February, myself and the executive director went on a trip there to kind of feel things out, train leadership. You want to have local buy-in. You want to work with local organizations. You want locals to be excited and trained well so they can be a part of what's going on. It can't be just about us coming in and bringing something. The hope has to be planted. The hope has to be fostered and grown by them. Through that, God birthed this vision of partnering with Community of Faith Church and planting Community of Faiths in Thailand. Working with 2 local organizations, Tamar Center and Hand to Hand, they work with 2 very different dynamic groups of people. Tamar Center focuses a lot with the bar girls and in prostitution and human trafficking. Their ministries are about loving these girls and these lady boys where they're at. It's also about creating sustainable lifestyles after they help to free them. So the ministry that you do with someone like Tamar Center involves being in the streets, being in bars, being in the shops and training these girls. It's a really different dynamic than Hand to Hand Foundation, who primarily exists in the slums. They work with kids, they work in prisons, they work in these dirty, disease-ridden places where there's no hope. And when you have a group like us come in that is about offering hope in Christ, you talk about ripe fields.
Working in the slums, one thing that was amazing about what this organization does, opposed to some others, are that this organization, we went into the slums and we really were what I would consider Jesus being like to the people. And it wasn't just a, hey, we're gonna come knock down your doors with Bibles and preach the gospel at you. It was, we're gonna come and love on you and feed you and clothe you and play with your kids and give you a concert for 2 hours and just be with you. then we'll tell you about Jesus. And that is what a lot of people miss, and that's what Hands of Hope really understands. Music is awesome because it transcends every culture, and you can have music that it doesn't necessarily matter what's being said, because people feel the beat, they feel the, whatever instrumentation is happening, and they can immediately connect with it. So if they see people jumping around because there's a upbeat song, or if it's more of like a mellow type thing that's just creating an atmosphere, everybody can relate to that. So whereas words sometimes fail, music picks up underneath that. I didn't expect there to be like both the reception that we had to leading worship, but then also some of the oppression that we faced leading worship. So it was like a little bit of a mixture of both. I kind of expected it to just be like, oh cool, Americans playing music. But once we got there, it was more of like a, hey, we're leading worship and a lot of people are participating and enjoying it and jumping around and dancing and stuff. Even if they don't know the words, they're like, hey, these guys have joy, they're having fun, they have hope, they're bringing us life. Whenever we're having more powerful worship, I mean, there were girls coming out of their bars, stopping their business to come and literally cry in the presence of the Lord and be filled with joy and hope in life. And it was absolutely incredible.
I love kids. I love working with kids. I love talking to kids. I don't care if I can't understand everything they're saying. They face things that most adults don't even face, and they've seen financial worries. They've worried about whether they're going to have food tomorrow night, whether mom or dad is coming home tonight. They've had to worry about younger siblings. And I mean, this is at the young age of 3, 4, 5, 6, and these kids are trying to figure out how to take care of their families and how to sustain themselves. I mean, that's insane. And they're coming to preschool, they're coming into kindergarten, and here I am, and I've just walked into their world, and yet they're so open. They just want to love. They just want somebody to love them. They want to know that worrying about mom and dad coming home, worrying about having enough money, they want to know that that's not the only thing in the world that there is. The cool thing about telling the kids about the gospel is that they'd really just run with it. I mean, they pick up this love and they give it to everybody else, and they don't care if the person they're giving it to can't understand them, or is their age or isn't their age, or is their grandma, grandpa. They don't care if that person is Buddhist. They don't care if that person is atheist. They're just gonna share that love that they found. And it's just amazing, like the way that we would see in the slums, these children who are from hand to hand, or who would come to Christ through crusades. They would go home and they would tell their mom and dad, I'm going to pray for you tonight. I'm going to pray that you will know what it's like to have the love of Jesus. And I think that's probably the most amazing thing about this ministry, is just getting to see people in terrible situations and having amazing joy in their hearts, because they know that even though they're in this situation, and yeah, they're probably not going to get out of it any time in their life, they have this amazing love of Christ, and he has them here for a reason, and that he has a plan for them. I mean, that just takes away all feeling of being lost.
These girls come from a lot of different backgrounds, but the heaviest part of it is poverty and not feeling like they have any other way to make an income or make a life for their family. They're really good at fooling you and just putting on this face and just trying to act like they have joy, and then as soon as that's gone, they're just broken and exhausted, and they're just in this state of just trying to get through that night. The girls on our Hands of Hope team, we got to be a part of what the Tamar Center does, and one of the big outreaches they did was the bar ministry. Before the bar scene's all set up and it's still daylight and girls are just getting there, not changed into their outfits yet, no makeup, and what you really got to see was just a raw version of who they are, and it was just another girl my age that I can connect with, and started talking to her and how her day is, and she just was broken and not looking forward to what she had to do that night. And I shared with her a little bit about forgiveness, and just seeing the look in her eyes, like forgiveness, like she didn't understand that concept, and really she was just in shock, because she didn't think, because she's been told her whole life that she's not good enough and she deserves where she's at, and that's kind of how it is with the karma and the heavy Buddhism. They just think that they're in this life, they're in this position because of the bad that they've done, and if anybody tries to offer them hope, then it's going to mess with their eternity. Once they go to the Tamar Center for that, they get to know the people and build relationships with them, and that's something that's really important, is building relationships with them after a person from a 2-week mission trip like we went on. You can go and talk to them and tell them about Jesus, but then we leave and we go back to America. So pointing them to a place where they can always call home and they can build relationships with people there, that was really important. And once they go into the English class, get to know people, then they just really start turning them into disciples and sharing the word with them on a deeper level.
We're really anticipating the next things that we do there. Already we are hearing of baptisms happening, we're hearing of salvations happening. Every single week we have slums begging us for churches. We have leaders, people that have met Christ in a new way or for the first time, who are ready to go to their home villages to see their families won for Christ, to start businesses, to start churches. God is stirring a movement in Thailand, and it's not just because of us. It's because God has used us to equip and partner with these local people and local organizations. We're excited in the summer here. The plan is to go launch 3 more community of faith churches. Last time we went in to launch 3 churches, 4 were planted. There's no telling what will happen by the time we get there, but we're anticipating a fresh movement of God in this season, and we're excited to see how revival will spread through a country that right now is less than 1% Christian, but is dying for hope.